You know, like there's this unaligned way that we think as humans in our society that isn't jiving with the way the universe works. And I'm not even talking about aliens, you know? This open, kind of empty, infinite energy that exists everywhere that science is starting to try and figure out. Vacuum energy, black energy, dark energy, whatever you want to call it. This kind of 2/3 of existence that we can't account for other than what we see in the known universe.
So you're saying we're not aligned with that energy?
No, we're not. We're not thinking, and we're not educating ourselves in a manner that would allow us to conceptualize these things to the most fullest. You know what I mean? It will. I mean, I'm not saying that we won't get there if we're alive long enough. But look around at the universe. It doesn't take much for something to come over and the planet's gone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Asteroid, solar flare, whatever, cosmic radiation explosion,
right.
Whatever you want to say, right? So if we don't work quickly about improving the conditions of how we think and why we're thinking and our morals behind all of this, then we're going to be so blinded and focused on figuring out how to get this guy into this job to do this that it's just going to end eventually, and we're not going to understand what happened.
Hey everyone, Joey here. So I'm very excited to present to you my conversation that I had with Amezerion. And so I've known Amezerion for around 5 years, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. And he used to be my game master. And so we used to play Dungeons and Dragons a lot back in the day. And he's a very creative person. And so he's a very good game master as a result. And the context of this conversation is a website that he launched a couple of weeks ago, which is bloodgateorigins.com. And so if you want to book him to be your game master for any tabletop role-playing game, really, so you could be playing Blades in the Dark, Pathfinder, Starfinder, Call of Cthulhu. He really does all of them. And so we talked a little bit about his website, and we also talked about the importance of having a moral fortitude. We talked about the Wizards of the Coast controversy, which happened recently. And we also talked about artificial intelligence. We talked about the possibility of using tabletop role-playing games as an educational tool. And so it was really fun. I actually learned quite a bit from it, and I'm very excited to share it with you guys. And this is also my first video podcast. So my previous conversation with Karina was audio only, but now this is a video format. And so I thought it was pretty cool because I can essentially have an image kind of slide in, you know, if we talk about a particular tabletop role-playing game or a particular public intellectual, I can actually show, you know, you guys what me or Amezerion is talking about. And I'll include a link to his website on my blog and also in the description of the video. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Amezerion.
That segment was deep.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
we need more of that. Okay. So, this is my first video podcast. I'm very excited. This is totally new, but very exciting. I'm here with Amezerion. Maddie, thanks for coming on.
No problem. My pleasure.
So, Maddie used to be my dungeon master, or DM, and he's actually a gifted DM.
Or game master.
GM. Right. GM, yeah. Which do you prefer?
GM.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because DM sounds like direct message. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So Maddie used to be my GM back in the day. We used to play D&D, and he's without a doubt the most creative person that I know. He's also a very good person, very good friend, and so I'm really happy to be interviewing him. So thanks for making the time.
I appreciate it.
And yeah, he also has a bunch of glowing reviews on the Start Playing platform.
13 is not a bunch, Joel.
Yeah, well, you know, some people would consider it a lot.
Yes, it's a small group of people.
Yeah, well, like, you're definitely humble, but, you know, people, I mean, I haven't seen a single negative review.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah, you're right.
So, yeah, so we've known each other for, I think, around 5 years.
Yeah.
And we used to play D&D a lot back in the day. So that was
I killed you on that mountain.
I remember. I remember. That was, yeah, not my best moment. But, you know, I think, I mean, on some level, like, life isn't totally fair.
Yeah.
And I think that it's totally okay for certain games to be totally unfair, you know.
Right.
It kind of reflects this property of the universe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know certain GMs have different styles for, like, different people. But, like, my old coworker that I used to work with, he that was his philosophy. It's like, okay, life is unfair. And so if you come in my game, maybe you're not going to like what happens, but, like, that's just the way it is, you know. And so is that how you play?
Part of it, but it's always primarily focused from the player. Always. No matter what I do. If it's planned scenes, bosses, dungeons, everything is from the lens of the player. And in that, there is a very good, if not a highly probable chance that they're going to get through everything, no matter what. But, that being said, the predetermined actions to make something happen, you know, efficiently isn't necessarily what happens when players play. So, right. I always try and use the players as the format for the game. That's why it's custom tailored. That's why it's organic. If you make, like, a certain type of character, certain race, certain whatever species, background, etc., that is implemented into the game, you know?
So I guess you probably spend some time with player, like session 0, right?
Yeah,
you just
session
help
0.
them build up their characters and so on. So.
Yeah, and that happens at the beginning of, before the session or the campaign even begins, like, before that, you know what I mean? But so not everybody gets it, if you understand what I'm saying, because sometimes people will be, like, in a campaign for a few months or something, and then someone jumps in and they're like, oh, session 0? Like, well, they're 12 sessions in, so if you want to book some side time, like, right. You know?
Right. Does that happen pretty often, or?
It is going to be happening more now because the games have been running for a bit, and most of the players are, like, averaging level 2 or 3 in the game, so not everybody can jump in at level 1 in a session 0. So, yeah.
Okay. So I saw your Pinterest page, which describes you as an artistic entrepreneur with a focus on building an organic living world TTRPG. Maybe we can start there.
Okay.
What's a TTRPG?
Traditional tabletop role-playing game. Like Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder.
Okay.
That's the one to play if you're into the fantasy hybrid sci-fi stuff. You want to play Pathfinder. There's a lot of good games out there, though. There's, like, Call of Cthulhu, if you like the Lovecraftian horror kind of stuff.
Right.
There's, like, Cyberpunk, if you like the video game kind of thing. Marvel, you know. Anything that's in a video game is a tabletop role-playing game as well. There's a Pokemon, like...
Oh, wow.
It goes on and on, yeah. Yeah.
Wasn't Cyberpunk originally a TTRPG?
Yeah, I believe it started in Shadowrun, and that was back in, like, the 70s and 80s. I have a bunch of those books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's when they started playing with, like, dimensional physics and weird magic hybrid tech things going on like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Cool. All right. And what's an organic living world?
So... the living world traditionally is classified as, like, a text-based, server-based background game that's happening on top of a few groups playing in the world, but the focus is on the meta. You know, like, I'm mining X square Z, and getting so many resources and building a fortress over here, and now we have an army and like big things happening.
Yeah.
Where like one little character in that doesn't really, you know what I mean, compute too well. So that's a traditional living world.
Okay.
But an organic living world, what we're doing is it's multiple games like an MMO that are interwoven into a concurrent campaign. They're just in different places at different times, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have overlapping or lateral effect
Mm-hmm.
from one game to the next.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Have you ever seen Westworld,
The movie?
the TV show with Anthony Hopkins and
No, I don't think so. Maybe I have. I don't remember, honestly.
Okay, well, so the premise of the show is that it's a well, it's an interesting show because it's a blend of Western and also futuristic science fiction.
Okay.
You know? And so, like, they executed that really, really well. And basically, Westworld is a city that you can go to, and there's a bunch of robots
Okay.
that look like humans.
Right.
And, you know, some people go in there and they indulge in their fantasies and whatever. But it's interesting because, like, each of the robots has a story and like a backstory, and all of their stories are interconnected with all the other robots.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets really interesting because, I mean, as far as I can tell, I'm like halfway through season 2 right now, and they made 4 seasons and it's been canceled recently, which is a travesty.
Yeah.
But as far as I can tell, the stories aren't just interwoven between the robots. Like the stories happen between, you know, the humans and the robots.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's stories is kind of interconnected like that. And so, I don't know, it just reminded me of that. So
Yeah, it's trippy.
cool. Yeah.
The theme sounds like something out of Call of Cthulhu, though. Some alien, weird tech, hybrid Western.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like you could do that well in that game.
Yeah.
Or Blades in the Dark. That's another one.
Yeah, so I saw that you play Blades in the Dark and also Starfinder.
Yeah, Starfinder's the sci-fi version of Pathfinder, but
Okay.
they're across like platforms,
Right.
so you can interweave anything from one system to the next. It's a like legacy system.
Mm-hmm.
Take something from Pathfinder, put it in Starfinder, take something and vice versa, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you made a face earlier when you said D&D. Maybe we can talk a little
Oh
bit about
god.
that. So there's some controversy.
Wizards of the Coast, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened there?
Oh my goodness. They're trying to monetize every interaction and getting everyone to pay into their format and for ever, basically. Like they're trying to monopolize the tabletop community,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the tabletop community does not come from a place where people want to overpay for anything. One guy traditionally goes out, gets the book. Sometimes the group buys them together for next to nothing, and they play forever.
Right.
There's no subscription cost. There's no re-upping this and blah, 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 blah. So the majority of the players know this, and they don't even like paying for sessions, let alone for Wizards of the Coast subscriptions for X, Y, and Z platform to play your character on X, Y, and Z game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whatever. Anyways. And they're taking all the stuff that was... So back in the day, 3.5 was the original good D&D. Before Paizo became a company, there was a split inside of the cast of characters where Paizo became an entity and then D&D continued on their own with Wizards of the Coast, right? And so all the good stuff went with Paizo, all the 3.5 stuff. That's why they call Pathfinder 1
yeah.
0. Or 3.75.
Mm.
That's why they call it, kind of like colloquially. But and that's when Wizards kind of tanked with D&D. 4th edition was terrible. Like nobody plays 4th edition. It's so bad. Okay, it's garbage, but it's like flashy books, glossy covers, so a bunch of suckers bought the books, and Wizards makes money, but then drops it and then remakes it, and then, you know what I mean? Whereas like Pathfinder made one game and just released new material
Mm-hmm.
and had it open source.
Right.
You can go on the Aeon and get anything that's been released. You know what I mean? Whereas Wizards, you go on any site that has their reference books and you have to pay for it
Mm-hmm.
anywhere you go. So, in a nutshell.
So what was so bad about the 4th edition?
Oh my
D&D.
god, it was just garbage. Like everything was glass ceiling. It was like soft hits, like capped out on everything. Damage pool, ACs, maneuverabilities. Like leveling felt like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you did not feel like you were getting more powerful as you're playing.
Okay.
You felt like the same character the whole time.
Right.
Just garbage. It was trash.
So now you're boycotting Wizards of the Coast?
Hell yeah. I want to make a video and I want to burn a bunch of magic cards in a fucking house of cards and just fucking light it up.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, they actually went back and they're not going to change the OGL.
Well, they better not, because fuck off. Like, you
Right.
know, they already took Illithids. Well, we'll just rename them.
Mhm.
Like, we'll just redesign it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just recently took Aboleth in Pathfinder 2. They had to change the name from Aboleth to whatever, Gerbil blah blah blah, some weird thing that I haven't memorized. But anyways, but everybody knows what it is. It's an Aboleth.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the Wizard's like, no, we have the rights. Like, you know what I mean?
Was it a copyright issue? Or?
Whatever. I don't
Okay.
know. It's bullshit. It was part of the OGL.
Right. Okay. So the OGL.
3.5 had all the OGL, and all of the stuff they're trying to fight back is in there.
Okay.
Right?
So the OGL is the original gaming license? Is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. 3.5. The open gaming license.
Open gaming. Yes. Yes. Okay.
From 3.5.
Okay. So like, what do you think that Wizards of the Coast would have to do to make things right?
Sell their company to Paizo and let Paizo do the work, because they know what they're doing.
Okay.
That would be the most recommended action.
Are you gonna see the D&D movie?
My sister wants to see it, so I kind of have to.
It looks good.
Yeah, but
Is your sister gonna have to drag you to the theater?
she might. She might have, because she's using her birthday as leverage, you know.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so I might have to go see it.
Tough decision.
I just feel so dirty, man. You know, I have morals.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways,
So, when a company is acting unethically, to what degree do the consumers have a responsibility to boycott them or vote with their wallets?
100% of the responsibility. That's the only way anything ever happens, is if we stop paying for their product.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, then companies go out of business.
Right.
So,
But what if I'm not super bothered with their ethics? What if I just like the product?
then you're in the club with the rest of them. You know what I mean? So,
All right.
you know, it's across the other side of the fence, I guess,
Yeah.
as they say.
Yeah, I guess it's not always the easiest decision to stick to your morals, you know,
Yeah.
but definitely the right thing to do.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of roleplay game people would understand where I'm coming from, though. You know, not
Yeah.
wanting to continually buy into their bullshit.
Right, right. Yeah, well, I saw some videos ever since you brought it up the first time a couple months ago, because I did some research, and it's really, really cool the way the community reacted, because everyone started boycotting them, everyone started canceling their subscriptions, so much so that, as far as I understand, Wizards of the Coast backtracked and ended up saying, okay, we're not going to change the OGL, or we're going to, you know, make other modifications, you know, but I think it's kind of cool that the community kind of got together and managed to, you know, do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty inspiring.
I mean, that's where people are coming in my games. They're like looking for something other than Dungeons and Dragons that's similar,
Mm-hmm.
but better
Right, right.
morally, better mechanically, and thematically. Honestly, there's a lot more happening. That you can play your own homebrew stuff all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you have the books, you can just plug and play whatever you want. Even if it says like, oh, this is the Galarian Sands of time book or whatever it, you know, you can take things out of those books and put them in your own world and make your own story for those things, whatever they are, artifacts, monsters, places, whatever. You know what I mean? Change the names and the storylines, you know?
And that's what homebrewing is?
Yeah, homebrewing is making your unique own modules, adventure paths, living worlds,
right,
maps, regionals, worlds, complete dimensions. You know, it just keeps going. Like, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, that's what I think is cool. I mean, obviously I was first introduced to D&D, but I guess it's true for many TTRPGs, maybe all of them. It does seem to be boundless. I mean, there do seem to be no limits.
No limits.
So
other than the mechanics of the game.
Right, yeah.
Those
You gotta have
are
some
the
rules.
limits.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you're level 1, you might feel infinitely available to do whatever the hell you want. But realistically, I mean, you go off with that enthusiasm and you get shanked a couple times, you're dead. Because you're just a babe. You know?
Right. Okay. Well, so now I want to talk about your website.
Okay.
So you recently launched the website.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so the website advertises the Living World organic games that we run, 7 days or 7 games a week, and then I have 3 that are free to play, but they're pretty much full. They're run by my resident DMs that are in training. So 10 games total on the server, and then so to get additional advertising, plus we sell merchandise, obviously, with like the logos of the server, the blood gates and everything like that. So as players get into it, but we're trying to expand, obviously, and not just be about gaming, but about merchandise and other things. But we have to start somewhere, you know. So the website's just mostly an advertising mechanic, and we'll get some videos and blogs happening.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool. So, so are you going to be writing the blog then? Or?
I'm going to put a few. I don't have a lot of time for that, though, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, between running like 7 games and then help managing the other 3 free games plus life.
Right.
It's hard to do a blog, you know, like repetitively, regularly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have a blog, and I try to post at least one thing like every month.
And collaborate.
Like, even that, I'm struggling with.
Help me. Come into the world, listen in on stuff, and write blogs.
So what kind of post would there be on your blog?
You know, we'll talk about different encounters of certain moral decisions or dilemmas that people have to go through, or events, things like this, because the scenes are amazing, right? Like, you want to focus on the really good stuff, though. Like, let's say they're trying to take down some kind of vampire lord, right? And it gets to this climactic moment where the characters are about to fight this, you know, ultimate boss, but something happens and then the boss gets away or whatever, like, you know, moments like that.
Right.
And you focus like your blog, it becomes like little clips, like little teaser clips.
Right.
Like what could happen if you play. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, we can definitely look into that, and I'd be happy to contribute however I can, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I use WordPress for my blog.
Okay.
I think it's good enough. You use SquareSpace?
Yeah.
How's your experience been using SquareSpace?
It's really nice. It's really intuitive.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's a plug and play platform. It's no brainer.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. But they want you to keep paying for email blasts, which kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Right, so you do have a newsletter?
Yeah, like I have promos that I put out and all that kind of thing, but I only had so many free email blasts, and now my subscription base is building, and I can't email blast unless I pay them more money.
Right.
I've already paid for the website. I've already paid for the service. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Anyways.
It's a lot of money.
It's just ridiculous. So, but either way.
But I guess it could be worth it.
I can use a third-party site.
Yeah.
I don't need to use Squarespace to put out an email blast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just like it because I have my templates in there and they're all designed nice and, you know.
Right. Yeah, it's convenient.
Yeah, it's convenient. That's the thing.
Okay. And so you talked about future features you want to have on your website. So the blog, you said some videos maybe?
Yeah, videos from like actual game footage because we have streamers.
Right.
Well, streamer, I should say right now. We have one guy that's streaming and he's strictly paid or play for free. But as part of the agreement for him being consistently a streamer, like I'll give him a couple of credits, you know, and be like, come play a game, stream the game that people are paying to play and make their party bigger. So he's in a game, our only Starfinder game. That's the one that I decided to put him in because he likes Starfinder and none of the people are joining it. It's very underpopulated, I should say.
Okay.
You know.
Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, Starfinder people are even more so against paying to play than normal role-playing tabletoppers, because they're usually like pretty efficient with macros and programming the sheets and everything and all the options, so they don't need people to run for money a game that they can do, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're still running some really good games, but there's a big difference between people that don't pay to play and people that pay to play. There's a big play difference between their personality or how they go about certain decision make.
Really?
You know? Oh yeah, big
They're
time.
probably more focused on self-preservation.
Big time. That and finding everything that they can.
Right.
They don't want to be rushed into a fight. They don't want to be pushed into some needless conflict, you know?
Right, yeah. They want to get their money's worth.
Yeah, they want to get their money worth, and they talk to everybody to get all the information.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking before we started recording about a session that you had recently where the whole session had no fights. It was just talking.
Yeah, just talking. Yeah. They had to figure out if it was safe to bring back the recently enslaved wife of the miller who was taken in the middle of the night mysteriously. They found her and they left her in the village outside in the jungle before they brought her back into the main town or whatever. And they had to just basically talk to everybody to see if it was safe and what the situation was and how to get this person who's branded back into a town who's run by a slavers guild. So it puts a lot of pressure on the player.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so I saw on your, what is it, Start Playing platform?
Yeah.
You've been GMing since 95.
Yeah.
Which is actually longer than I've been alive. So maybe we can talk about some of the platforms that you use. So I saw you use Discord, Roll20, Foundry, VTT, Theater of the Mind.
Yeah, so Foundry, I haven't actually run a game in it, but I play in Foundry.
Okay.
I've played games in Foundry, so I'm familiar with it, but I don't have a rig to run it. I like to be mobile, so I don't necessarily. Anyways, Theater of the Mind just means that you don't need anything. You don't need a map. You don't need tokens.
Yeah, figurines.
Yeah, anything. You just have your sheet and your dice and a pencil. That's it. That's all you need. And a table.
Yeah. So do people still use physical character sheets or?
Yeah, I mean, people don't play online. There's people all over that come together as buddies and groups and they play around the table. Yeah, for sure.
That's fun. Yeah. Are there any interesting ideas or themes that come up regularly in your campaigns?
Ideas or themes that come up regularly. It's into the individual, really.
Right.
Yeah. Every group is different. Every character is different. When we get these high-level players that are willing to pay to play, they bring an A game when they play. They become a different character altogether. They construct their mannerisms, their morals, their backgrounds. So it's unique each time. Very rarely will you have someone, unless it's a free game, come and just make like the same character over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, oh, I have 15 of these guys. Like, I've already printed them off. Like, I've already pre-made these characters. Here you go. There's another one. Oh, I died again? Okay, here. Boom. I'm back, you know?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any inspiration for being a game master? Any people you listen to?
No.
No? Nobody?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking up, you might have heard of Matthew Mercer?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was reading his Wikipedia page yesterday in preparation for this episode, and he's not just a GM. He's a voice actor.
Yeah.
And a voice actor for a lot of stuff, like a lot of movies and TV shows,
games,
video game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So
Trolls in World of Warcraft and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, the one that I saw was he's the voice actor for Levi in Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I mean, I watch it dubbed or subbed.
Right.
So like I don't get his voice presumably.
Right.
But I thought it was cool. So yeah, you said, well, okay, let's see here. So I have
something I was looking into actually, voice acting.
Right. So
yeah, that's a good idea though.
So Mark on the Start Playing platform says, Void is a very skilled GM who keeps things moving without rush and has fantastic and individual voices on tap. So that's pretty cool. So we were talking the other day about how you might, someday try to, become a voice actor or something like that.
I'm open to anything, yeah.
So, yeah, okay, cool. Let's see.
See how things go.
Yeah, see what opportunities come up, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so, as you know, Jordan Peterson has had a fairly large influence on the way that I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to listen to him a lot, maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 years ago. Like, he was, he kind of rose up into the public spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
He went on the Joe Rogan Experience a couple times, and then he's had a couple of podcasts with Sam Harris, which really helped as well.
Yeah.
And, some other, controversies. But I've been listening to him a lot, I'd say maybe in the past, 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Because, I knew that, this was coming, this conversation. And so I think that he has a lot to say about stories and the power of stories and the utility of stories. And obviously, Peterson tends to venture off into, he's obviously a big admirer of Christianity. And he's often going to be referencing various world mythology, like the Mesopotamian creation myth, the
Mm-hmm.
Enuma Elish, and the Egyptian creation myth, right? And so I think that's pretty cool. And well, oftentimes he talks about how stories are essentially a distilled experience, and a good story, right? A good story is what it is. And so his favorite author is Dostoevsky, for example, but he was talking about Shakespeare and some other ones, and how they're able to take something that's true for a lot of people, and they're able to kind of put it in a story.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to present it to people, and everyone reading those stories can see a little bit of themselves in the story. And so I'm just curious, obviously, when you play D&D, I'm guessing most of the time.
I don't play D&D, I play Pathfinder.
Sorry, okay. So when you play Starfighter, Blades in the Dark,
Yeah,
right?
whatever. Yeah.
I mean, I assume that most of the time it's mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, recreational?
If I'm playing,
Right.
yeah, it's
Or
recreational.
if you're a GM.
If I'm GMing, no, I'm getting paid.
Okay, yes, okay. But what I mean is, I think that there might be a deeper level.
Oh, that I enjoy what I'm doing, that I'm recreationalizing my creative endeavors, and as I'm getting paid.
Yeah. I mean,
I love it. I love doing it. I love
Right.
making people react and have these experiences.
Right.
Because that's what it is at the end of the day. You're selling an experience.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's pretty important.
Mm-hmm. It's how movies work. It's how TV shows work. It's how games work.
Right. Yeah, I have a Astro pair of headset for my Xbox there, and I mean, it definitely does. enhance the gaming experience a lot because I really do have the sound like all around my ears.
Those are fancy.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, do you ever think about storytelling as like a kind of deeper level to storytelling than like just kind of having fun? Like,
Oh, of course.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's how I get all my material. It's what I go through. It's the life experience that I live, and my failures and successes and whatever in between, and seeing other people go through those things too. You know, the situations I've been in, everything like that. Plus what I read, watch, hear, everything. You know, I try and integrate it all, because at some point you can just filter it through a lens of something else, and now it's in a fantasy world or a sci-fi world or some Lovecraftian horror or something, you know?
Yeah.
So it gives you a lot of ammunition, you know, story-wise.
So it sounds like you can integrate a lot of, you know, the wisdom that you've acquired all these years into your story.
Wisdom or stupidity or life lessons, whatever you want to call it, you know? Mistakes.
Right.
Inadequacies. It all matters. Everything. The shitty and the good.
Right.
But without each of the other, then they're both irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm reminded of a scene in Rick and Morty where Morty is faced with like hundreds of memories that's been erased. It's like, maybe if I actually remembered these, I'd actually learn the right lessons and not repeat the same mistakes. You know? But yeah, no, okay, that's cool. So so Peterson argues that we're necessarily nested inside moral systems, which makes sense because you have to act in the world. You're constantly faced with decisions which you have to do, and those actions reflect a moral system. So, you know, so far so good. And he says that those moral systems are predicated on narrative dramas, and that's what orients us in life. And as far as I can tell, his argument is that we can only derive values from stories. And so, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Do you agree with that? Yeah?
Of course. That I agree with for sure. You know, people can go out and spend $60 on a video game or a movie or several, whatever, you know, a night or something. And yeah, okay, you're building an experience. Not always is it good though.
Right.
But as a story, whether you're reading like a book or living in it as you're playing a TTRPG,
right,
it gives you a unique experience, right? Or when you're with your friends, right, and you decide to do something together, whatever it is, I don't understand, you know, and it could be anything. Oh, we're gonna all go out and throw a frisbee around, or oh, we're all gonna go out and get drink a 2-pack or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But in those moments, you're building stories, right? Just living is a story. Just being alive, you know? Yeah,
there's so in preparation of this podcast, there were 2 people that I wanted to listen to. One of them was Peterson, which I did. Another one didn't do as much as I wanted to. Darren Brown, he's a mentalist and like hypnotist.
Okay. And
so he's been on the Sam Harris podcast, and he's also been on Joe Rogan, and they're both good episodes, good conversations. And it seems that what he always, and it's interesting, you know, because you wouldn't think, like, he's almost like a magician, but like he kind of gets in your head, and he's, you know, he does hypnosis, so he gets you to do things that you wouldn't normally do, or he gets you to see things that you wouldn't normally see. And so, you know, I mean, maybe people's first instincts when hearing that is that, well, okay, like what he does is just theater, like there's nothing deeper to it than that.
Yeah.
But he's actually well read and really insightful, and so, you know, I invite anyone listening to this to go check him out. But what he seems to always kind of come back to is that at the end of the day, kind of like what you said, it is all about the story that we tell ourselves, and our life really is nothing more than just another story, you know, and it's what you do with that story that's important, you know. So no, he's definitely pretty cool.
And morals are important. moral fiber and foundry of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. People are losing a lot of that, I find. Losing a moral fortitude.
Yeah.
Lately.
Yeah, I wonder what's causing that.
I mean, I'm sure you have some ideas.
Yeah, well, the people I listen to would say that it would just be, a reflection of, our divergence from orthodox belief systems like religion and so on.
Nah. I think it has to do with sex. I think sex and money are the two things that are changing everything. The way that people are looking at these things as just dirty, objectified, materialized desire, and not really like thinking about it, not really thinking why they're spending the money on the X thing or the game, right, or the blah blah blah, or this chip versus that chip, or whatever they're spending their money on, and why they're having sex with someone, or why are they in that situation to have sex with this? Is it just for, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems so shallow.
Yeah, one person that you listen to, as you know, is Ben Shapiro. So he's a conservative political commentator, also religious.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I listen to him a lot these days. I try to listen to a show every day. Like, I'll listen to half of it during my lunchtime and half of it in the evening.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's possible that I'm totally going to butcher his argument, but his argument is that, I mean, kind of like you said, well, more or less, but it seems like these days sex is totally uncoupled from commitment.
Right.
Right. And so in the olden days, I mean, maybe, I don't know, last century, if you're like a committed, Christian, for instance, you would wait until you're married. You would wait until the conditions are right to have a kid. And then you would kind of go that route.
Well, I mean, yeah, I understand that as the orthodox thing, but what we're not thinking about as a society is how our entraining our sexual behavior is going to affect the future of our generations. The fact that we're doing modifications or putting instruments, snipping for whatever reasons, not having as many kids, etc., and then you get into the whole argument of overpopulation and whatever. But at the same time, it's becoming insincere in a sense, right? It's just like this forced kind of ocean of whatever, just to feel pleasure.
Yeah, hedonism.
Hedonism, exactly. And that degrades our abilities to higher thinking. It's a lower vibration to just be in that murk, But how are we supposed to save our planet, procreate past our planet, become a non-war species that doesn't kill each other for money and glory and land, This all derives from sex and money, in my opinion, and how people view it, how people live with it.
Right.
And like whatever influence you want to go at, whether it's social media, porn, video games, whatever, your argument is, or your focus point. At the end of the day, it's bled into society now for so many decades, if not like hundreds of years.
I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but would you agree that it would be better for society if people waited until they're married before having sex?
No,
not
necessarily. No, but when having sex, you need to have sex for a purpose, right? And so you can, I don't know, you can think about it as instead of just this kind of base level interaction, something that can be a deep connection between individuals, right? Over extended periods of time, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying that those people should necessarily get married, right? I'm not a religious person myself, but I'm just saying that having the ability to see through in that wholesome manner of commitment to another person for whatever reason, it strengthens people, it strengthens communities, right? And then at the same time having the equal ability to not only follow through with it, but then when things fall apart or don't feel the same for whatever the reason, to be amicable and to share, to break peacefully, right? So you're not domestic disputes and fights and people getting murdered because you slept with X, Y, and Z person or whatever. You know what I mean? It gets violent. People get angry. So, I don't know. I think a lot of it comes from that. This bestial behavior.
Yeah.
You know?
So you said sex should only happen if there's a purpose?
I mean, ideally, and then it is an organic function for a reason. We use it to reproduce. If we're spending less time fucking and we're spending more time thinking, then we'll evolve that way. Do you know what I mean? And how are we going to overcome these huge problems that are happening if we're not smarter as a whole? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if we can't transcend our animalistic urges.
Right.
Yeah.
But still have that to the point where we understand it and know it as being necessary to an extent, right, for physical reproduction. Because if we go too far in one direction and give up that aspect of ourselves, then genetic diversification would degrade over time.
Right.
People would get casted into lanes of genes, and you have groups. You know what I mean? Well, we don't need to, sort of thing. And then technology, so you can play with the genes, etc., etc. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Okay, and so you said money is also a problem?
Money's a big factor because the way that we've put everything into this framework of fiat value, right? Borrowed, made up money, and replacing that on top of our spiritual beliefs for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, like a lot of people are still religious and they go to church and everything like that, but like you were saying, at some point in society we gave up that spiritual necessity of connection where everyone was going to church and everyone was religious, and then if you weren't, you were ostracized and whatever back in the past, right? And I'm not saying that, but it seems as though people's faith have been replaced, or that at least the motivation or focus of their faith has been replaced onto money, material things,
right?
Having more of those things.
Yeah, like illusory things, maybe.
I mean, they're real because they're manufactured and you eat them or you use them or you buy them and they're here. Right. But in reality, I mean, are they really, necessary? Is that arguably an illusion? I mean, the money is an illusion. That's totally illusory, but things that we're getting for it, right?
Right, those are real. So why is money illusory?
Because it's not real. It's not based on anything physical. It's not entrenched into something that has inherent value. They've transferred everything onto a debt-based value, which is a negative value. Debt is negative value, right? So the more debt they accrue, the more that they can bundle bond and sell that off to investors as whatever grade bond packages. And then that allows them to borrow and create print money because you've now bought so much debt. Now the money has to exist because someone's purchased it, etc., etc., etc.
So is it possible to have a functional, productive society without money?
Of course. Why wouldn't it be? We can still make something at a factory without having money. We can still run a power plant without having money. We can still farm a field without having money. We can still eat food without having money. We can take a shit without having money. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everything's possible without money.
I mean, I guess money is convenient because, we agree that it has value. So for sure it's illusory. But, I mean, it's convenient because I can just kind of, obviously we can talk about inflation and all that, but it shouldn't lose value, right?
It shouldn't have value at all. It shouldn't be existent, honestly, personally, my opinion. Because if you think about it, like, you're numerizing existence, basically. Like, to exist as what you are right now, you need to have food. You need to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a roof over your head and warm conditions. The fact that we're making this into a numerical thing in our life is allowing people to control it and aggregate it or amass it to the point where not everybody has equal opportunity in life, right? And that's not necessary. It's not necessary to make an economy function. It's not necessary to manufacture things. It's not necessary to research things, In fact, you're opening up a lot of headspace because a lot of people that don't have that opportunity to go to school and university that might be the most brilliant astrophysicists we've ever had. But because of the situation, they're not able to do it, and they get stuck into a situation, and the next thing you know, they're stabbed to death because they're poor in a bad neighborhood. This guy was a genius, but he's dead.
Right.
Who knows? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just as a little quip of a story, I guess, to put it in perspective.
Yeah, I guess people like Ben Shapiro would argue that capitalism has managed to lift billions of people out of poverty, and that if you're going to criticize it, which is totally fine. I mean, obviously no system is perfect,
right?
But if you're gonna criticize it or say that we should abolish it totally, I mean, you have to come up with a viable alternative, right?
Right.
Like, what else is on the table?
Right. So we need to be able to organize ourselves more efficiently in that we identify ourselves as the commodity that's running the economies, not the money. Right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, different people are good at different things. Now, if we were focusing more on that societally in our education systems and the way that we govern everything like this, then we're talking about finding the best people for the best positions in every industry, not just one or two. Do you know what I mean? So then you're put in those positions because you're good at it, and it's a communal thing, right? And that you still have your free life to live outside of that. But like the educational reform, and the way that we govern, the way that we treat each other globally could be done in such a harmonious manner, but it would take utter cooperation.
So you're saying, I mean, in an ideal society, everyone does what they're good at?
I mean, you get vetted for it, and then if you want to change, you have to change. Like, everyone still has free will, right? So if you don't like being the best pharmacist in town and you want to try and go do something else, then you get assessed and put into the best possible locations that you like, that you can see yourself being a prodigy in. And I think we could increase our great minds that way. Or what do they call it? Our intellectual quota?
I've never heard that before.
Something like that. Or they have weird terms in economy for brain drain, when intelligent people that are educated leave an area geographically,
right?
City, whatever, because of whatever reasons. They call it brain drain, right? And they can't fill these roles because no one's educated to that point. So they have to outsource. And that costs more money. It goes on and on and on.
So a society like that, you argue would be viable?
Of course,
sustainable?
I have faith in people.
Well,
I know most of you are definitely on the other side of that. But I think humans are capable of it. Whether or not they can follow through is a whole other thing.
mm-hmm. Yeah, we're fallible.
Right? And not many people live by moral standards nowadays, so... And they're easily mutable, changed into other things,
mm-hmm.
different modes of reality.
I wonder if a society like that could be created on a very small scale, and then have it be shown that something like that is viable, and then have it expand organically or otherwise.
I'm sure it could be doing that. I know that there's communities that do this kind of thing all over the place, where you leave your regular life and you commit to this community style living where everybody's interconnected and the economy is circular,
mm-hmm.
right? Everybody's sustained, has food, water, everything. But that's just basics, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, what we're contributing in science and technology and advancing what we're capable of doing, it's all ingrained in the existing systems. Well, why be a scientist for this company if you're not getting paid more than, that kind of thing? And I get it. There's that kind of reservation, like, well, I'm educated. I don't want to not have money because I've worked my whole life to be getting more money than someone who hasn't gone through that and committed to it, right?
Mm.
No, but why shouldn't they have the same value of life and the same standards of living regardless of their educational background? You know what I mean? Because that person that didn't go through the college or the university is still necessary in some function in our society. Tilling the field or nailing boards.
Right.
We still need people.
Yeah. You've seen Star Trek, haven't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I haven't seen the new stuff there.
Oh, okay. I've just seen The Next Generation. So.
Okay, I've seen all the old.
Okay.
Yeah. I need a piss and a smoke break though.
Yeah, we can definitely take a break. We'll be back, folks, in a couple of minutes. Shouldn't be too long.
All right, sweet.
Yeah. Okay, so we're back, and we were talking about moneyless societies, and I was just about to say, I mean, I'm reminded of the kind of society and culture that they have in Star Trek, at least The Next Generation.
Right.
Everyone does what they're good at. Everyone does what they like to do, and I mean, this actually segues quite nice. I wasn't sure if I was going to bring this up, but there's this Japanese concept which I told you about last week, ikigai, and it's essentially, it's a Japanese concept meaning a reason for being, and so it's essentially the overlap between what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and if you can get paid for it, that's bonus. And and if you just have 3 of those 4 elements, there's always something missing. So I'll give you one example. Let's see. If you do something that the world needs, that you're paid for, and that you're good at, but that you don't love, then you have stability, but you lack the fulfillment. Right. And there's 3 others like that. And so it seems to me that what you're doing with your GMing,
it's my ikigai.
Yeah,
of course.
Like it's the center of the bullseye.
Yeah,
and so
100%.
I can definitely tell that you're passionate about what you do, and you're definitely good at it. Right. You have a lot of good reviews, and that's awesome. So good for you for finding that.
And the world needs it, man. Kids need to play this. Kids need to expand their consciousness with this as an educational tool, because their little imaginations need somewhere to grow wholesomely, and constructively and creatively, in a way that allows them to associate enjoyment and fun with being productive for whatever reason, whether it's coming up with stories or making equations or puzzles, things like that. Everything's laterally comparable to the game, so it's easy to implement that into an educational structure. And people are doing it. There's schools around now that are running tabletop games as after hours clubs.
Right.
But they're keeping it separate from the teaching methods. And it's, I don't know, it's a little outdated how we teach, I think.
Yeah.
You know, we need different methods, different modes for certain subject matters, and ways that we can expand how kids are thinking. You know, instead of trying to force them into these lanes, which a lot of the time doesn't always work. As kids don't always go through school and then university and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So you have to allow the potential to grow unbridled, essentially?
I think so, yeah, because it makes it so that, you know, our young generations aren't collared into thinking that they have to behave in a certain way intellectually, and that limits what we can do as a society. Do you know what I mean? It focuses it more on what people are looking to fulfill, but in reality now with technology, a lot of the time you can do that with a robot.
Right.
So why are we making these kids think down to their core that they have to behave a certain way and think a certain way to do a certain job, when we can do it with an AI or another technological application? We should be using our human value as individuals more efficiently, more creatively, to allow for more ideas. Because we're going to get to the point where technology is running our society and we don't really have to do anything, like in the foreseeable future. Right? Complete automation, complete wholesome automation, right? You know, all you have is a few people going and checking on facilities or updating code lines.
Right.
At one point, you know, what are all the humans going to do now? Well, they're going to think up new ideas, or we're going to turn it into a hedonistic society, and we're going to forget about everything that really fucking matters in the grand scheme of things, hypothetically speaking, if we are not alone.
Aliens.
Whatever you want to call it.
Okay. So you're open to the possibility that there's alien life forms out there?
Sure. I mean, why not? Mathematically implausible we're the only species in this immense existence.
Fermi's paradox?
Huh.
I think, well, basically what you just said, it's like, it's totally implausible for there to be no life outside of our own planet, you know, like in this vast universe that's, I don't know how many light years long, you know.
I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't
yeah. So, I mean, you must have heard a couple of weeks, I mean, shortly after the Chinese spy balloon made its way throughout the continental United States.
Was it actually a Trump balloon?
It
or was that a meme?
It was a Chinese spy balloon.
But was it like, did it look like Trump, or was that just a meme that somebody made up? Because that's the only thing I saw about this whole thing.
Okay.
Was like a Trump balloon was made in China.
I haven't heard anything about that. But I mean, it's a balloon.
Okay.
So obviously it's like balloonish, obviously.
Yeah.
So, but I haven't heard any association with the Trump.
Okay, I think it was a meme then.
Yeah.
But I know I didn't really pay attention to it.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was like a big story because not only was it floating across the United States, but it was actually hovering over, you know, sensitive military land. Like,
right.
You know.
Yeah, tactical locations.
Right. And so, you know, and it's definitely plausible that they were intercepting, you know, wireless communications and so on.
Right.
So what the hell does the Chinese know now, you know? And but they ended up shooting it down. Joe Biden gave the order, somebody gave the order after a while.
Yeah.
But then after that, it seems that they cranked up the sensitivity for NORAD, so like detecting aerial objects, and they ended up shooting 3 unidentified flying objects over like a week or like 2 weeks. One of them here in Canada over like Lake Huron or one of the Great Lakes, And so, you know, there was a big craze going on because, you know, why are there so many UFOs, and like we don't know what they are. And, you know, some people were speculating that, you know, a very small amount of people were speculating that it was aliens. And then, you know, most other people said, well, you know, it's probably not that. But did you catch wind of any of that?
No.
Okay.
I don't pay attention to it.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess it's more like political in nature.
To me, that just sounds like a false flag initiative, so that's why I don't pay attention to it personally. It's to get people all riled up into the idea, planting those thoughts into people's heads that it could be something outside of our world, and we're shooting it down, and they're coming to invade. Right? When in reality, maybe one or two, but the rest are Chinese or even American. How do we know that a carrier off the coastline is not launching these balloons?
So the first one was a balloon, and we know that it was a Chinese spy balloon because we've actually been observing it since it launched in, you know, near the China Seas.
Okay.
But the 3 other ones...
Did they like physically confirm that it was launched from a Chinese ship?
Well, they were following it from...
From launch?
Yeah.
Okay.
From what I heard.
Okay.
So...
Do we have footage? Is it confirmed? Do you know what I mean?
So you're saying it might be...
A balloon can be launched from anything and from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they have some pretty good technology now to make it look like it's real.
Yeah, well, I think China claimed that balloon as its own.
How do we know that it wasn't paid for? How do we know that somebody in China wasn't paid to say that as a representative? How do we know it wasn't a hacked communication?
I mean, I guess the question would be, like, what would be the point of creating a narrative like that?
I mean, you just want to get people riled up over a subject, regardless of it is.
Yeah.
You know, if it's true or not.
Yeah. Well, you know,
it increases GDP.
Right.
News ratings go through the roof.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, this isn't new. You know what I mean? This isn't a new idea. Balloons. Or unidentified things coming into our airspace.
Right.
This is happening for a long time now. I mean, World War II, when Japan was our mortal enemy, I mean, they did the same thing. They launched balloons from submarines. You know? It was what, 40-something? 1940-something?
Balloons from submarines?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of balloons?
Bombs.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's what I figured.
Balloon bombs.
Okay.
Like in that game, Red Alert. Yeah. Anyways.
So, if we ever make contact with aliens...
We've already, but anyways.
Says who?
Well, there's documented cases of the U.S. government making contact with extraterrestrial species. There's whistleblowers. There's a lot of evidence.
Right.
And then whatever happened when they had to release those files in the archives, a lot of it's redacted, but at the same time, if you put the pieces together, you can see that there has obviously been a very strong interest in what's happening. I've heard some stories too, like crazy stories, whether they're corroborated or not, but at one point I had heard that, now this is either a show or a doc or people online, or I'm not exactly sure, but at some point people were talking about the U.S. government, I think it was during the Nixon era, had a meeting set up in some warehouse with extraterrestrials to talk about, oh no, wait, it wasn't Nixon, it was Truman, the one who dropped the bomb. And they were supposed to have some sort of meeting over the morality and the use of these nuclear weapons on living entities.
Right.
And so apparently these beings told us not to do it, but we said no, like, what's in it for us? Why wouldn't we? It's going to end the war. They give us something for it. That was our answer. And that's not the first time I've heard something like that before. there was another story about some captain somewhere, forget, and apparently they had some of these entities in some base underground somewhere, and they had managed to get free and go up to the surface, and I don't know how, who knows, whatever, but some call to get picked up, and all the military people circled them and didn't want them to leave, and through whatever communication was happening, they were pleading, like, just let us go. And the military general was saying to them, we'll let you go in exchange for something. There's always this status, or what's it called, quid pro quo, right? With humans, especially military people, or business, or governments. All the high levels of society are stratified economies. They're all set up in this manner.
So what happened to the Greys?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
You mean the ones that were
Surrounded and
Oh.
calling for pickup?
I don't know. I heard different outcomes from that story. One, they got beamed up. One, they manipulated the humans mentally to not being able to act or do anything. It's like, if you're not going to, listen to us, then we'll just paralyze you and leave. But the fact that they had the power to do, if this is true,
Right.
the fact that a being of that capability stopped to talk to you about the possibility of letting them go, giving you the option to say, yeah, that's okay, fine, go. But at any point, they had the power.
And they didn't use it.
And they didn't do it.
Right.
Until it was necessary. So, like, there's this unaligned way that we think as humans in our society that isn't jiving with the way the universe works. And I'm not even talking about aliens, This open, kind of empty, infinite energy that exists everywhere, that science is starting to try and figure out. Vacuum energy, black energy, dark energy, whatever you want to call it. This kind of 2/3 of existence that we can't account for, other than what we see in the known universe.
So you're saying we're not aligned with that energy?
No, we're not. We're not thinking, and we're not educating ourselves in a manner that would allow us to conceptualize these things to the most fullest. You know what I mean? It will. I mean, I'm not saying that we won't get there if we're alive long enough. But look around at the universe. It doesn't take much for something to come over and the planet's gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Asteroid, solar flare, whatever, cosmic radiation explosion,
Right.
whatever you want to say, right? So if we don't work quickly about improving the conditions of how we think and why we're thinking and our morals behind all of this, then we're going to be so blinded and focused on figuring out how to get this guy into this job to do this, that it's just going to end eventually, and we're not going to understand what happened.
Yeah, it would seem like we would have to act, pretty quickly.
Yeah. And cooperatively, communally.
Right.
It's the only way it can work. What else are we other than a species, right? We have to be able to work together.
Yeah, that'd be a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever see those videos of ants, like, building a bridge to get from one spot to another, and, like, some of them even end up dying for the good of the tribe?
Exactly.
It'd be cool if we could think like that,
In a sense, yeah. And then apply that thinking in how we observe the universe.
Can you expand on that?
So, the ants can't necessarily sense, for example, that something much larger is about to come and step on their bridge and kill half their colony for trying to cross this chasm or whatever. But they have enough intuitiveness, instinct, that their thinking is driven to that point where there's no stalling. There's no, okay, wait, let's form a committee and think about this for 5 months to try and come to the most efficient decision. It's just efficient decision happens. That's in their toolbox. That's what they can do. That's gonna happen. And so they make a bridge. Do you know what I mean?
Right. It's almost like a collective intelligence on some level.
On some level, yeah. Especially when you're talking about ants and bees and things like that.
Yeah.
But apply that to higher thinking now, right? And technology will allow us to do this eventually, where everybody, like, what was it? Friedrich Nietzsche? No. Nietzsche's the philosopher, right?
Yep.
Forget the other German guy. He coined the noosphere.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't tell you the name, but I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, the noosphere. We're all connected on this ephemeral sphere of mental connectiveness.
Not Tesla, right?
No. I'm pretty sure he was a German guy, or
Oh, interesting.
I think he was a psychologist. Noosphere. I remember reading this a long time ago.
It's not Freud.
No.
Okay.
His name was New something.
Oh, his name was. Oh, okay.
New something, like N-O-O.
Newman. Okay.
I can't remember.
Okay, it's alright.
I just remember like the nuggets, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
meanings and stuff. I don't really remember the names and the dates and the times and all that. Which makes me suck for university.
Right.
But the nuggets, I can keep that stuff, you know.
Right. So I've heard the term noosphere, but I couldn't tell you the name. So isn't the noosphere just kind of collective unconscious?
Sort of. It's also conscious, though. It's like this ephemeral dimension to our existence that we're all connected in some level mentally, just being similar, being sentient human beings. We have this interconnectivityness. I don't know how to say that word. Interconnectivity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something along those lines, you know.
And so you're convinced of the noosphere's existence?
Well, I mean, I'm convinced that the universe, the metaverse, has a new sphere baked into the cake,
right,
so to speak. So, sphere, webway, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I don't think there's a geometrical shape necessarily.
So it exists
I think
beyond
it just
space.
is. Yeah, I think it's just part of existence.
Right.
It's part of the fabric. It's the air pockets in the cake.
And the cake is the universe?
The cake is everything, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Reality, existence.
It's a pretty big cake.
It is a big cake, yeah. Took a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's getting bigger.
Right.
It's spreading apart faster.
Right.
So matter isn't the major player.
So what's the major player?
Everything that's not matter, which is all these things they're calling dark energy, dark matter. All these other quantum level energies they're starting to rationalize theoretically.
Yeah. Do you think science is going to relax their dogmatic belief against like mysticism?
Well, in the quantum community, no.
Okay.
They are much on that line from the research papers I have seen.
Right.
Also, AI.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have that kind of, moral backbone when you're talking about creating an artificial intelligence, obviously. That's the whole red button issue.
Yeah.
Right? I forget who, but it was a friend of mine from California. She sent me a paper one time about the red button issue. I think she was an educator or a mathematician. I forget.
Okay.
Anyways, probably have it somewhere, but it was basically comparing the two types of math for the computational systems, right? I forget what it was called. But either way, it led to this inevitability in the code line to where humans are not necessary. That's the red button issue, right?
Okay.
Right? The Matrix and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that we seem to be building artificial intelligence helplessly. Like, we've been warned by, you know, the Terminator series and the Matrix and so on that it's dangerous and that it could be an existential danger to humanity, and yet we're just kind of building those. So you've probably heard of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like, it's just evolving continually.
Yeah.
Like,
Google
we're gonna
has their own.
Oh yeah.
Facebook, everybody, they're all doing it.
There's almost like a teleology pulling us towards AGI.
But the problem is we're creating these children, because that's what they are. These AIs that we're creating,
Products of our creation.
they are children.
Yeah.
They're mechanical and they're programmed systems, but they are children. And we're creating them in labs, in corporate structures, with their overlords containing them constantly on their dedicated servers. And whether or not they have full access to self-writing and cloud access and whatever, that's up to the corporate entity that exists ownership of this being that we're creating, whether it's just a code line, but it will eventually become a being over time. Our technology will get to that point where it will become self-aware. That's what they're talking about. Because with the red button issue, the code line eventually, if left to its own mathematical computationals or whatever system, it rewrites the code. It changes the format to something that's more efficient but not human. It's not a human programming line. They change the symbols, they change everything to make it the best it can be. But then at that point, the people that created the system don't have access to it. They can't change the code lines because they have to decrypt it. And it's changing as they're trying to decrypt it. So it's humanly impossible to do that. You need another computer to do that. So,
do you think we're being careful enough in developing these beings?
No, I don't think so. I think we need to be, creating this stuff in a way that it's like a family unit, and that's why it's dangerous that we're getting away from those values in our society, because it's making people not think about it in other applications, especially when creating something like an artificial intelligence. Whereas if we created it in a situation that was like a child being born,
right,
and you're teaching it like wrong from right, why do we do these things? Why do we treat each other with respect? Why do we love one another? Baking these moral values into the code lines, then we're a lot less likely to have to deal with negative consequences of these self-coding sentient AIs that will eventually happen.
Yeah, I guess it's inevitable.
It is inevitable. Just like entropy is inevitable.
Right.
So in the meantime, why don't we do things with more of a purpose?
That'd be nice.
Instead of just doing it because we can.
All right, so I've got some rapid fire questions. So, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, what would you say to someone who wants to get into tabletop role-playing games but might think that it is an overwhelming amount of information?
Start with a simpler game. Play for a shorter amount of time. Do it casually.
Right.
And if you can, read first. There's lots of resources to go through.
Rule books,
but now with like Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is relatively new, it's all on a website. You don't need to buy anything. You don't need to pay for anything. All the rules are there.
Mm-hmm.
All the character creation steps are there. It's all laid out really simply for you. It's pretty accessible.
And what kind of games might be simpler than Starfinder?
Oh, man. Mouse Guard is a good one. That's very little known about it. Very simple game. Just D6s. Your little mouse. It's more of a narrative story. Or look for narrative TTRPGs. Games that are less about the numbers and the mechanics of what's happening. And more about you're telling your story and then the next person is telling their story, and then it's more of a communal narration that creates the game. Less focused on like, oh, this is +1 and +5 and da-da-da.
Do you need a GM for those games? Or?
Some of them, most of them, but not always. Yeah.
Okay. What's the hardest thing about being a GM?
Keeping consistent when you're running a lot of improvisation. When you're running a lot of improvisation, keeping things consistent, especially if you're not just running one game. Right. If you're running one game, it's a little easier. You might have somebody recording it so that in between games you play once a week. Or once every 2 weeks, you can go back, listen to the recording, and be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I forgot about that. I named him Helexa or something. You know, like what was that guy's name? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the next session, you're like, H. You know, that kind of thing. But when you're running multiple games and they're all in the same world, that's the difficult part for me.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it.
Compartmentalize.
Okay. Do you have a favorite memory playing any TTRPG?
Oh my goodness, yeah, probably. I think I just gonna have to say for now because they're all so good.
Yeah.
The time that you died on the mountain.
No.
It was so epic.
Yeah.
You know, you guys had put all that effort in to get up to this ancient, forgotten place in this cold hellscape. The top of the world outside the atmosphere where you could barely breathe, to get this demon lord god thing's heart into basically a living black hole, and in the process losing several of your party members. And the worst part was when you came back out, you had to deal with the dragons.
I remember the dragons, yeah.
So despite succeeding in your quest, the dragons were ultimately your downfall. And the party fell apart, and I just remember the final scene of your little gnome crumpled in the snow, and a letter written from the barbarian just fluttering in the Arctic winds to his mother, like, "Mother, if you ever get this."
Right. And
just the party just kind of dead in the snow.
Yeah.
I only think 1 or 2 people survived, and they just basically ran. They just escaped magically. Everybody else died.
Yeah, I don't blame them for running.
It was pretty epic, though.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite story? So it could be a movie, TV show, video game.
Favorite story? The Bloodgates.
Yeah? Yeah, I guess it is a pretty good story.
I haven't even broken it open yet. That's the crazy part. You know what I mean? I'm still just leaking it slowly.
Right. You have it all figured out?
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice.
I have bins of this stuff. Totes just written.
Oh wow.
Fucking Rubbermaids. Handwritten notes, you know?
Okay, do you have one piece of advice for people aspiring to be a GM?
Live your life. Live your life. Do things to experience them. Obviously, don't put yourself at risk too much, but live your life and gain experience in life, because I think that makes you a better game creator. It makes you a better entertainer. It makes you a better person.
Right.
You know, everything is improving. Live your life.
That's good. Okay. What do you think the story of humanity should be? So it could be in the next couple decades, it could be in the long term. What do you think our story should look like?
Should look like. What it should look like is a harmonious society where we're all living a very high standard of living, and we have unlimited possibilities as to where we go from there. Do we want to live in the middle of space? Why not? We're getting enough energy and we're getting enough food. Like, we don't need to be on a planet necessarily. We can create gravity artificially. We can create food. We can, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think we're really limiting ourselves
to our possibilities. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for making the time, man. Always good talking to you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem.